Good morning and happy Sunday. I am back in Brisbane and the weather is fine. It is beautiful here. It's so great to be back, and I've had a busy couple of days already while I've been here, and I was thinking about what to talk to you about this morning, and I thought I've been on 3 continents this week. I started in Rio earlier in the week, where I left you last week, and then I headed to North America on my transit on the way home, and now I'm in Brisbane. It's incredible. I cannot believe the ground that I have covered in the last 7 days. And I was thinking about all the amazing things that happened to me this week, and what I've seen and who I've met and what I've learnt and where I've been. And I thought, the only one thing that I can sort of combine to talk about all of those places and all those people is community. So I want to talk to you today about community. And I will get to that, but just firstly, I went to the Adele concert last night and it was so amazing. Anybody who has tickets to Adele in this tour, you are going to absolutely love it. It was incredible. Honestly, that woman is my icon. Okay, my Adele love is done. So, communities. I was in Rio this week enjoying the festivities of Carnival, and I discovered some really interesting communities there. And whilst a little bit of a brief history on Carnival actually has religious beginnings, and a lot of sort of religious festivals sometimes evolve and change over time, and I thought that I would be able to see a little bit more of the religious origins of Carnival, but I think that modern day has well and truly overtaken that festival. It was originally has Catholic traditions because it is a celebration prior to the beginning of Lent. So the 40 days of abstinence or fasting, or whatever it is you choose to follow with Catholicism before Easter is Lent. And so Carnival, for a little bit of useless information, is carne vale, which is farewell to meat. So that's how it originally began years and years and years ago, and it was actually European, and the Portuguese settlers brought it to Rio, and then different communities helped it to evolve over the years. So Carnival today is a 5-day exorbitant festival of street parties and samba and celebrations, and I certainly took part in that. I certainly attended a street party or two called Blocos, and I did get into a few churches, and I did experience some beautiful buildings, and of course I went to the Christ Redeemer, which you should check out my YouTube flick on that, because I put together a time-lapse of that experience, which you should give me some feedback on. But yeah, so the Bloco parties are now, these informal street parades where everybody dresses up, and they have a samba band walking through the streets, and you just follow the procession around, and there's a lot of beer, and there's a little bit of drunken debauchery, and I've decided that Brazilians are the most good-looking people on the planet, because all of the women and all of the men are just absolutely gorgeous, and often half naked at Carnival, but c'est la vie. It was great fun. But some of the communities that I explored while I was there, in between my Bloco parties and attending the samba parade, was the favelas. So the favela is a like a low-income shanty town settlement, slums sometimes people call it. I don't really particularly love that word. In Rio, and in fact all over Brazil, but there's some massive ones in Rio. and they're often associated with criminal activity and drug cartels and not very safe places to go. But I thought, well, I'll go check it out. And not that I suggest that you should wander into places with bad reputations around the world, but I had somebody who took me in there, and I wanted to discover the faith within these communities, because Brazil is I think it's the second biggest Catholic country in the world, next to Mexico. And, you know, if there's millions of people living in favelas, I suspect, or I assumed, that there would be faith within them. And there was. It was incredible. There was churches. There's a very big Catholic presence still there. There's Assembly of God churches. There's still Umbanda and Candomblé followers within those favelas. And the origin of these settlements comes from when a government promise was broken, basically. There was a battle, or so the story goes. Hi, how you going, Delmeet? There was a battle happening up in the north, and the government needed people to go up and fight, and they basically promised housing upon their return, and then broke that promise. So these soldiers who had returned, or these people who had volunteered to fight, had been then pushed out of the main city and had to build on the hills, and this is how these favelas developed. And now what you find there is this maze of houses and buildings and you know, micro communities that just work. You know, there's been a lot of stigma, I think, in relation to favela people, or people who reside in favelas for years. And when you're in there, you realize that everybody, again, is just the same. You know, they're living their lives, trying to raise their children, loving their Lord, you know, trying to get by. And I think that from what my host told me, you know, there's a real integration now, and there's a real acceptance that that's just a different neighborhood. That's just where people live, and, you know, it's not something now to be ashamed of. And I was really interested to see, you know, the faith that was running through every inch of this place. Like, there was up on the walls, there was like posters that just had like words in Portuguese that I didn't understand. And I said to the lady who I was with, you know, what does that say? And they're Bible quotes. You know, one of them was a verse out of Matthew saying, you know, those who are weary, those who are tired, you know, come back to me, basically, which I just thought was incredible. And also within these communities, they, you know, there's schools, there's, you know, restaurants, bars, you know, everything. They're big neighborhoods, and the sense of community is strong. You know, you feel like everybody gets along with their neighbor. You feel like it's really integrated and tight. And I thought, you know, maybe in our, you know, big housing in our suburbs, we're separated from that sense of community. You know, I know we all have different communities we're involved in. Like, you know, I'm involved in a church community. I've just come from C3 Church in East Brisbane, which a mate of mine, Steve Ryan, has set up, which is phenomenal. It's the first time I went there. It was really great, and they've got a really strong sense of community. And, you know, the communities and all the samba schools that are displaying these incredible performances, you know, they're a community. G'day, Joe. How you going? Sorry, is that like sun really blocking me out? I just don't want to look into it. Is that better? Yeah, so they were some of the communities that I discovered while I was in Rio. And then I had this 45-hour journey home, and I ended up having to swing past Atlanta, Georgia in the US, and I had 9 hours there, and I was just going to hang out at the airport, and then my dad said, oh, are you leaving the airport? I thought, well, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, so I did. And then I met some amazing communities. I wanted to go to the Martin Luther King Memorial District, I wanted to check out the Civil Rights Museum, and I wanted to see some churches. So I headed downtown on the train, which was very user-friendly and everybody was very nice. And I was sat outside the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and there's like a Martin Luther King Centre there, waiting to go in. I was just finishing a phone call, and I overheard this man who I met later, his name was Jesse, talking to a load of teenagers and saying how great it is what they were doing for their community, how they're really going to enjoy it, and all this sort of stuff. So I was eavesdropping basically. So I wandered over, I said, hey, g'day, how you going? What are you guys up to? And what they were doing is they had taken a load of, I think, grade 8 students, like early teens, out, and they take them to 5 different community involvement things for 5 days, right? So what they were doing that day is they were going out into the community, and they were handing out sandwiches and talking to the homeless and people who were not having a great time in life. And it just sounded incredible. So I sweet talked him to let me tag along, and we had the best morning. So we were walking around, and these kids, just fearless, walking up to people and saying, hello, would you like a sandwich? We're in the community today, just sharing food and saying hello. And I was so impressed. The school's called the Galloway School in Atlanta, so shout out to you guys. And what they were doing was just so inspiring, to be out there in their community. And we met a gentleman called Ben, who I'm going to write a blog about in a week or so when I have time to stop, who was battling with addiction for many years and himself was homeless in the streets where we were. And Jesse, or somebody like Jesse, or from Jesse's organisation, I didn't get the whole story, had reached out to him, and he had basically found his feet and now has a successful business and helps others. And he gave a really beautiful speech to the kids about what they were doing and how it's so important to be kind to others and so important to reach out to those in your community. And I was just so amazed with with what they were doing. And I'll be dropping that interview on YouTube as well, so check that out. And then we came across a open air church. So it was Ash Wednesday when I was there, and this pastor for years had been holding services in a church without walls for people. And we met a load of the volunteers there, and I was just like really impressed with this community involvement. And I was thinking about community, and when I lived in the UK, I felt like I didn't have a community when I first arrived. So, you meet people at work, you meet people at school, you have family groups, and I just felt like I didn't have that community. And it wasn't until I started attending Shipley Baptist Church that I really got ingrained in this amazing community of people who embraced me, who I felt part of. And community is a group of people with like-minded goals, or things in common, like commonalities. And I thought about religion and community and religion. And when I was in LA, because I had to fly from Atlanta to LA, I got speaking to this gentleman who was very anti religion. He's saying religion's just put in place to control the masses. And I sort of argued with him that sense of community, and he's like, community is just the blind-sidedness of the control. And he was all a bit anti-religion, and that's cool. I have those conversations all the time. But I was thinking, community, whether it be your school or your mother's group or your church, or your workplace. I went to Adele. I was in the Adele community last night. There was 62,000 of us having something in common. It's important. And I think if it started through your faith in God or Shiva or Buddha, you know, what's wrong with that? What's wrong of building communities through faith? I think it's important. And, you know, the third community that really inspired me this week was the community that I've just come from, the C3 Church in East Brisbane. And it's only been open in that site for maybe 2 or 3 months. And the sense of community in there was fabulous. You know, they do kids programs. Steve and his wife Sonia are really, you know, passionate about building a church community and getting involved in the Brisbane community, the East Brisbane community, and it just impresses me to see groups of people working together to provide a place that is welcoming and home and just a nice place to be. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the church, and I got a free coffee, so that was quite cool as well. Thanks for the latte. But it's just, you know, what does community mean to you? You know, is Tracy, my girlfriend's just joined, g'day Trace, she's got a community. She's got the CrossFit community. She's the one that originally got me into CrossFit, and, you know, I almost died the first time I walked out of there, but thanks anyway. You know, what does community mean to you? Are you part of a faith community? You know, what is your most important community that you're part of? And, you know, let me know, because I think what I'm finding as I'm walking around, as I'm traveling around the world, is community, as well as faith and food, it seems, is just the thread of humanity. It's the thread of society, because without communities, we're just alone. And it doesn't have to be a big community. It doesn't have to be a faith community. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's just community is, I think, what makes the world turn. And, you know, I'm off to India again on Wednesday, so flying visit back to Brisbane, and then off to Vrindavan in India to check out the Holi festival, which would be quite cool. And I'm really interested in seeing what communities I'm going to find there. So yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about that, because it seems so simple and it seems so common that we just take these communities for granted. But you know, what do they mean to you? How do they affect your life? How do they affect your mood? How do they influence you in your life decisions or your pathway, or, you know, just living life? I'd really love to hear what you think about that, because it's something I really want to discover, like what brings communities together, what keeps them strong, what makes them weak, you know, how easy are they to get into, who's an open community, what's a closed community, yeah, within the religious realm and outside of it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to chat to you about this morning, because 3 continents, 7 days, loads of flights, and a hell of a lot of coffee later, that was the common thread of what I'd experienced this week. So I am sweating here in the sun, so I'm going to get back into the aircon, and I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful week. I'll be coming to you next week from India, and yeah, drop me a line, let me know what you think about community and what community is most important to you in your life. All right, over and out. Bye guys.